सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.
Hello. Welcome. My name is JivaG, and this is the Bhakti Recovery Podcast. This is the first episode. It is the pilot. And, before we start our weekly program, I just really wanted to kind of let y'all know exactly what I'm doing here. Share a little bit of my journey with you. It's a real personable type of situation. I'm not here trying to be a professional. I'm not here trying to do anything except for serve a recovery community, any recovery community. And I have my posse in recovery, and it's really nice to be a part of that and to serve it. So basically, this is a door that's really, really wide. It's a very wide, open recovery program, podcast. And it's not just about recovery from alcohol and drugs and any other kind of like addictions. It's recovery from this life, actually, our journeys and the things that we experience, recovery from cancer, recovery from abuse, recovery from, anything that has been a life-changing, awakening process, ending some sort of suffering and stepping into action, into the action of recovery from whatever that is. My personal story has so many layers. I mean, the very first thing that I was recovering from was drugs. And, I really thought that that was 27 years ago that I got clean and sober, and, went from, homeless, shooting up heroin and cocaine, on the street with absolutely nothing left to lose, which was the most fortunate place for me, actually, because without that, I don't think that I would have gone into recovery if it was just sort of like drug abuse light, if there's such a thing. I don't know if I would have ever gotten clean. So, my story starts with that. My recovery story starts with that and goes into layers of other things to recover from, because I believe, and in my experience, is that when you take away the substance, you still have that addict, right? And you still have so many contributing factors. Well, at least I did, all these things that, that I was trying to medicate, and I'm left with that. I was so fortunate to walk into a 12-step program, to be able to, have a way that was completely simple, and all I had to do was follow. And this was, my whole life I had trouble with following anything. And when all of my resources, my own fights, my own way, my own thinking, my own feeling, my own my, me, when all of that stuff, when everything was exhausted and I couldn't figure out what to do next, it was so welcoming to me to know that millions of people before me just did these simple 12 steps, did 90 meetings in 90 days, got a sponsor, those things. It was so welcoming to me that I finally didn't have to think so much and do so much and feel so much, that I just did what I was told. And that was probably the most fortunate situation that I had ever been in. that being said, 27 years later, here I am. I was also fortunate enough to have a second bottom in my recovery. Not with relapsing with drugs, but not with relapsing with drugs or alcohol or anything else, but realizing that I was so codependent and I had just made a decision to just leave the life that I was living because it wasn't authentic. And when that happened, my whole life got turned upside down. And I had a marriage, all with the best of intentions, and never knowing what a healthy relationship was, realizing that how unhealthy that relationship was and how much it was affecting me and how much it was affecting, my ex-husband, my children and everything else. There was no other choice but to separate. But when I separated, it was as if the whole facade of a life that I was trying to live in a way, got taken away from me. It was as if the bottom fell out. And I had absolutely no idea who I was, what I wanted. And it was a very, very dark place to be. Realizing that I, had, the third step in a 12-step program is we give our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. And I had realized that I had given my will and my life over to the care of my husband and society as it understood themselves. And it was always somehow not that what I wanted. And I always felt that I should do it because I didn't have any other better ideas. So it's not that I regret, trying things that were new. I was always, I grew up a punk. I was a punk rocker. I fought society. I didn't want anything to do with it. I made sure from a very young age that I would tap myself up and never become an anchor or some straight square in society. But I did wind up just doing that. So, in hindsight, I tried everything that I could in order to lead a life that I felt, would be better than the life that I had had. I left home. Well, I was asked to leave home at 14 years old, and I never really went back. So I didn't have much direction. I didn't really know exactly how one should be leading like a normal life. And at the time, my husband seemed to have, he knows that he got, he was raised in some like normal kind of household sort of, but totally dysfunctional, but, on the outside normal. But anyway, that being said, that second bottom was as deep and as miserable as my first bottom. And let me back up because I was talking about, having that being fortunate enough to be in that position. The reason why I say that is because those are the things that make me move. I'm not the person till now to change because I see the light. I change because I feel the heat. I never ran out of the house because I smelled smoke. I waited until everything came crashing down. And, fortunately and unfortunately, that's how I learn, just as long as I do learn. Sometimes I absolutely wish that it wouldn't take so much, but, it is what it is. So after this had happened, I figured, I needed to figure out who I was. And this was really difficult. I had my daughter was already grown, but she was also a drug addict at the time. And I had a son, she was out of the house. And then I had a son at the time who was 7, and I needed to take care of him as well. And I had a full-time job and dark, very, very hard space to be in. And I knew that if nothing changes, nothing changes. And I knew that this time, just going to meetings and doing what I always did was not going to work. I knew that I needed something else. I knew that I needed to, I was about 17 years sober and clean at that time. So I knew that I needed something else, something more. Because I had, again, exhausted all the avenues that I understood and that I knew. So I reached out to an old friend of mine in New York, who's somebody who's into Krishna consciousness, which is, some of you may know it as the Hare Krishna movement. I always really resonated with the Bhagavad Gita, which is, excuse me, which is, I would say, I mean, for those who, I'm not going to go into it, but for those who don't know, it's like the Bible in India. Okay. So, and it's one of the oldest pieces of literature out there. So, I always had my idea of a higher power. I always had my idea of God. And not only my idea, I always had my relationship, a very deep relationship with God. And when I had left my husband and all that stuff, the connection to God was just not there. And I fell into this depression. So that's why I reached out to my friend. His name, when I knew him, his name was David. And he has a spiritual name, and it is Kastuba Das. Some of you may know who he is. He and Raghu do a podcast called Wisdom of the Sages. If you don't know it, check it out. It's a really wonderful podcast. It's how, they speak on Vedic literature and kind of put it down into a very relatable, everyday type of form so that everyone can understand. So that being said, I reached out to Kastuba. We went and met every week online and started to go through this amazing Bhagavad Gita. And I realized how much 12 steps has a correlation between the Gita and Bhakti, which is Bhakti Yoga, which is what the Hare Krishnas practice. It's one of the forms of Bhakti. It's the form of devotion and love and service. So how much it was relatable and how much deeper I got to go into my belief in God. And, everything is a process. Every single thing is a process. And, my door was always very open. My ex-husband was a devout Christian. And I have never, ever been judgmental of anyone's religion or spirituality. That is something that is deeply personal to each individual, and that door is always wide open. And I stand to that to this day. My higher power, whom I choose to call Krishna, is my higher power. It doesn't mean it's yours, and it doesn't mean it's exclusive to anyone. I do believe that all religion and all spirituality is a universal truth that every single human being inherently has. And they just need to find that one path in order to express it. And whatever that path is for everyone, that door is so wide open. And I'm a firm believer in that. So going through the Gita and the 12 steps was a huge eye opener, and it made me just deep dive and really develop a new and improved relationship with God. And it's exactly what I needed. And I got that spiritual awakening again. This was the hugest gift ever. I mean, I don't know if any of you here who are into, who go to 12-step programs or have recovered from something, some of us, and I was one of the fortunate ones, were gifted that, that space of time called a pink cloud. That's what we call it in the 12-step program. And I think other people might call it a honeymoon period. For me, it was quite like, if, for those that have seen the Wizard of Oz, how like Dorothy and everything, it all starts in black and white. And then when she gets to Oz, everything is in Technicolor and it's just like this whole new world. And she's just bedazzled and bedazed and blah. From Oz. That's kind of how it was for me. When I first came to recovery in 1997, when I got clean and sober, it was as if I got gifted a whole new life, and that life was seen through a complete different lens. It was as if everything that was ugly turned beautiful. Everything that was black and white and dull and dark became light and colorful and full of life and beauty and wonder and promise and hope. I got that again. I got that gift again. And actually, the first time I had that gift, it was like 3-4 years of that, which I was super happy about. It was like, I don't want to say it, but it was like God-given cocaine or something. Just like so freaking amazing. And I got that a second time. I think it was 2016. This too shall pass, right? I mean, everything too shall pass. So the one thing that I have realized is that every layer of conditioning that we have in this life, every layer of baggage, conditioning, in this life, and I believe in past lives, that we carry with us through this life, with each time that we do the work by uncovering, like active work, uncovering each layer. That's how we get our relationship clean and right with our maker, whoever that is, whoever you believe it to be. I still go through, I struggle with depression. I struggle with depression. It is part of my, what we call in our world, or what I call in my world, is my karma. And I don't mean it like, hey, karma, man. Like, I don't mean it that way. If we really study what karma means, from, my standpoint or from my belief system, I would describe it as like, it's like a video game, something you gotta, I believe it's like a video game. Each time we go through a really difficult, challenging time, which can be dark and bad. Each time we do that, and we work towards, even if we're capable of that time, working towards, spiritual solutions to these material problems, or our mind or our emotions, the things that we feel we can't control. Each time we do that, it's like getting another, what do you call them in video games? You go to another level. It's like bing, 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 go to another level. Bing, 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 go to another level. And that's something that actually keeps me personally motivated. So what I really want to do with this podcast, and that's just talking a little bit about my experience in the last, we'll get to know each other through the months and whatever. What I really want to do in this podcast is give anyone and everyone who's working towards spiritual solutions to material problems space to share their experience, strength, and hope. And for the listeners to listen and to want to understand and feel not alone anymore. We are not alone. That's the thing. We're not alone. So maybe I was a little all over the place, but this is basically what I wanted to introduce to you all. And invite everybody to share and show up and, really open that door. Just, spiritual solutions, material problems. I am so grateful to be doing this podcast. I was asked to do it. I always wanted to do a podcast, but then I figured, oh my God, everybody has a podcast. Who the hell wants to hear from me? Like, what makes me any different? But you know what? I don't want to be any different. I'm just who I am. And, if 2 people listen to it and get something from this podcast, freaking hell, great. I'm glad. So if you care to donate and get something from it, please do. I don't even know where to donate. I'll put it in the comments, I guess. I think it's Patreon. I think we're doing a Patreon thing. Yeah. So, and if you don't want to, that's super okay. I just want you guys to get something from this. I want so much that people benefit from this podcast. I want people to be inspired. I want people to come and share their experience, strength, and hope, and share this wonderful road and path to recovery, whatever that looks like to you and from whatever you're recovering from. Let's get together and inspire others, have a community together. Yeah. So that's it. That's the intro. And I'm really, this is the, the pilot. And, I'm very much looking forward to serving this community in any way that I can. And if you are interested in serving this community, then please, let us know. The email will be in the comments, I think. I haven't actually even talked to my wonderful friend and confidant, Katarina, who has made this all possible. Thank you, Katarina. And she'll be taking care of all of the, information and all that other stuff. So she'll put that in, and I'm looking forward to this journey with you guys. All right. Let me know if you want to do an interview. I'd love to interview you. All right. Take care. See you next week.